Say we have our animate file nice and ready to go. We can start this coding on rain by first creating our raindrop. And right now I'll just make it really big on a nice new layer. Uh, we'll do a kind of a line. We'll make it thick. It could be anything you want. It doesn't have to be a line. It could be a raindrop shape. It can be whatever. And so this is the rain. Now, right now this rain is just a shape, so it has no name. There's nothing I can use in my script to tell that to do something because it's just a shape, so there's no way to control it. As you've heard before in the previous animation video, we can use a movie clip symbol to give it a name. So we're going to go ahead and make it a movie clip symbol by going to here, convert that to a symbol. Okay, and I'm converting it to a symbol versus making a new one because it's just one shape, so I can convert that. If I was trying to, if this was some kind of animation, then I would want to make a new symbol, copy all my frames or my layers, and then paste it into it. But in this case, it's just a shape, so I can just convert that shape to a symbol. We'll call it raindrop, and leave it as a movie clip. Okay, we'll learn about buttons later on, possibly. Okay, and so now it's a movie clip raindrop. And again, the nice thing about that is if I have 3 of them and I change my mind and I say, oh, I want the raindrop to be a little darker blue, remember that I can either double click in here or double click on here. I can change that to a darker blue, and all of them get changed together. Okay. So I still have a problem. These are all raindrop movie clips, but I can't tell one to do something and not the other because they all have unique names, just like you guys have unique names in the classroom. So I can call this one raindrop 1 or raindrop 2 or raindrop 3, but then I'll have to write code for each individual raindrop, which is going to be a pain. However, that's the way we'll start. We'll control 1 and then see if we can make it so that they all do the same thing. So to add a script, the best way to do it is you can do it on this layer, but let's be organized and make a new layer. And we'll call this new layer A for our action. Actually, it's a habit of using A for ActionScript, but we're not doing ActionScript. We're doing a little JavaScript. Okay. Now, before I start, I do have to check one more thing. We can, of course, do the same thing with ActionScript. And here under more settings, I can see here that this file is set to be a ActionScript 3 file. So we could do it with ActionScript, but I want to show it to you through the HTML5 because the Flash player and ActionScript have limited use nowadays. The Flash player is basically, if not fully dead, almost dead. Now, ActionScript will still be used to make iOS apps and Android apps. So there is still that functionality of ActionScript 3, but most people needing interactive animation nowadays would want you to do it in HTML5. And so we need to set this into our HTML5. So there are 2 ways you can convert this to HTML5 if you accidentally have it as ActionScript 3.0. As can be seen here in the ActionScript settings. One way is to, of course, copy all the layers or frames and paste it into a new HD file. This time, make sure to pick HTML5 canvas versus ActionScript. Another way that might be easier is to go to File, Convert to HTML5 canvas, and then you can save this as a different file that now has the, here you can see is HTML5 now. And so we will be able to do it this way. Now, I grew up during the ActionScript 3 days, or ActionScript 1, 2, and 3. So I'm definitely a lot more comfortable with those, but it luckily was similar to the JavaScript. So it's not too much of a I guess effort to change, except there's some things you get used to, so you might see a few mistakes along the way on things I don't do that commonly. But again, we do have some resources that help built into Animate to make coding easier. Of course, to add our script, I will go ahead and right click on this new layer I made and click on Actions. So even though it's not ActionScript, they still call them actions. It's still a scripting language built into Animate. And we can start coding in here. And we can write what we wrote earlier from the lecture demo. But there is an easier way where we can have Animate write it for us, especially because we're not very good at writing language yet because we're just learning. So if you go to Window and click on Code Snippets, you'll see there's these kind of little code snippets for us to use. We don't want to use this, although of course this one's a lot more built up. It's a lot bigger. We want to go into this one, okay? And the one I'm going to play with right now is animation, because we're not trying to control the timeline. Timeline navigation is if you want to jump to frame, say 20, because there's something there. You maybe you're doing a website and there's products there, and frame 30 has other things. Or you're doing a choose your own adventure type game where you tell it to jump to frame 5, and that's where the monster is. Or if you choose a different door, it goes to frame 10. And we'll see if we can get to that another day. But right now, we just wanted to animate this raindrop going vertically down. And so there is, look, an animation folder, and you can move it horizontally, or vertically. That just moves it once. But you can animate horizontally. That means, or animate vertically. That means keep moving it. So if I double click on this, it's going to yell at me and say, "Hey, what thing do you want to move?" And I say, "Oh, I want to move this guy." And you can't grab them all three, so you just got to grab the one, and then double click here, and look what it does. It went ahead and actually made its own layer called Actions, and put a little A there. Look for script. I'm going to delete the one I made. Since it wrote it for me, I don't need the other one. And look what it did. It wrote the stuff we discussed earlier. Remember the tick, and it made some kind of function name, and then defined it here. And then here, look at this, what it did. It used the name, this movie clip 1. Why did it use that? Well, I forgot to give my movie clip symbol a name, so it wrote one for me. If you look at here, this one, see, there's no name, and there's no name, okay? I can call this one, let's call it Bob, and you'll see if I call it before I add the snippet, it'll use this name. But if I don't give it a name, if I leave it blank, it'll have to make one up. And, the one it makes up is not the prettiest, but hopefully you realize that that's what this is. Okay? Movie clip 1 is that guy. Okay? And this stuff in purple means that's built into the anime. Remember the library that it understands. It understands what this is. It understands what function is. It understands what this. It does understand what this is. I'm not sure why this is not colored. Normally it is in ActionScript 3.0, but in this one, who knows why. So it's listening for the tick. Every time it ticks, it's going to run this function. And remember, this function could be whatever you want. Remember, we can call it move rain. But if we do call it move rain, then we have to define what move rain is. And here's where we define the function. Move rain. And it is case sensitive, so if you write move rain like this, then you need to do it like that. And this is a common thing in programming, to capitalize the second word so it's easier to read. You can see that it did that here when it renamed our file, our raindrop, into movie clip 1. And it go ahead and moves movie clip 1 10 pixels. Let's go ahead and run this. Now if I hit Command Enter or Control Enter if you're using a PC. That's the shortcut to debug the movie. Not debug the movie. Control test the movie. In browser, there's Command Enter. So I hit Command Enter, and it opens up my browser, and there's the raindrop falling. Okay? So let's go back into this. But it didn't move these other guys, okay? Because remember, this guy's Bob. So I would have to go to Code Snippets, look for that thing again, and animate vertically. And look what it did. It wrote another script that says, "Hey Bob, you also moved 10." And look, it made up another function called animate vertically 2, and then it's telling that's what this is. It's Bob's movement. Okay. Now, if we have 100 raindrops, this is going to be not a very smart thing to do. So there must be an easier way, and there is, of course, in these graphical scripting languages. The thing we're going to do is, instead of trying to say, hey, movie clip 1, move 10 pixels, and Bob, move, and Sam, move, and have this long list of every single raindrop, we're going to try to put this code inside the raindrop. So just like the raindrop has the graphic, the symbol has the graphic of a line, and if I delete that raindrop inside the symbol raindrop and I redraw it like this, like a raindrop, you see it does that because they're all the same symbols. So if I could somehow add the action script in here, then they would all have the same script. Okay? Now, unfortunately, there's no easy tool for that. However, it did help me a little bit. I'm going to go to this main timeline and copy this script. Now, I'm going to get rid of one of them. And what is this gray stuff? This gray stuff is a comment. Comments are just for info. In case you're working with someone and you want to say, this is what this does, or that's what that does. Like, this moves the raindrop. Because you can imagine coding can get pretty complicated. There's pages of coding, and it might be hard for someone else or even you to come back to it and say, I wonder how I did that, or why did I do that? Why did I write this line? If you put some comments on there, it'll let you understand what you were trying to do. And of course, there'll be sometimes comments on top of code that you can download or find to tell you, this is how I did it. This is what you can change. So here you can see here it says, to change the direction of the animation to up, change the number 10 below to a negative value, because negative means up, remember? And to change the speed, which the simple instance moves, change the number 10 below to the number of pixels you want it to move every frame. So it kind of gives you a hint. Of course, it's not needed. It doesn't go along with the animation. It doesn't get exported. It's just for us. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the meat of the code, which is this, and get it out of here. And of course, I don't need that anymore. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to put that script inside, but we do have to modify a few things, and I'll help you with that. So I'm going to double click on this raindrop. So now I'm inside the raindrop. And remember, the raindrop has its own timeline, like when you had the walking person inside the symbol, and that symbol, remember, kept looping and looping. So we can make the raindrop have a little animation. So let's say I just want to have it kind of blink one color to another color and maybe change it to red. So now it goes blue, red, blue, red. And if I test that out, you'll see it blink blue, red, blue, red. Okay. Very frantic because it's happening at 24 frames per second. But that's not what I really want to do. What I want to do is go inside that symbol. And again, make sure you're inside the symbol. And look, I could put the script in here. And we could do it like we were doing initially, where I right-clicked and I went to Actions here and put my copied script. Now, remember, we're inside the symbol now. So we can still leave this as is, which means do this every tick and do this function, move rain. However, to move it, we don't have to specify the name anymore because we're inside the symbol. So technically, there is no symbol called movie clip 1 in here because this is just a shape. Okay? So you'll see here in the properties of the object, there's no symbol, it's just a shape. So we can't call it out. So if I try to run this script, it's going to ask, where is movie clip 1? And I'm say, well, there is no movie clip 1. But because there's no symbol, but we're in the brain, if we just say Y, then Y is referring to the Y that we're in. Now, normally in ActionScript, this would work. However, in HTML5, we have to leave the this part. We have to say this guy's Y location, move it 10 pixels. Okay? Now, remember, all of these scripts have all this stuff. So if I double click on this guy, look, he has the same script. If I click on this guy, he has the same script. And if I change it to go like slower, like 1 pixel, well, then they all change also. Although we'll learn how to make them have unique speeds later. Okay. All right, let's see if that works. Command Enter, And they're all falling down and flashing. Okay. Now I'm not liking the flashing, so I'm going to go to my timeline, in my symbol, and I'm going to remove that frame. Okay. And I am going to speed it back up to 10. Okay. And I am going to change that back into a nice little thin line, or at least a thick line for now, so you can see what I'm doing. And then run it one more time. There it goes. Okay. So now they all have the script built into it, and all I had to do was modify the script by taking out the name. Just like you don't tell yourself, like, hey, I should, if you're going to tell yourself to do something, you don't use your name. You just say, I'm going to move 5 inches forward. I'm telling myself to move 5 inches forward. I don't have to say, hey, Steven, move 5 inches forward. I just say, move my Y location. Okay? And also by not having to specify someone's name, then they can all share. Okay. So now they're falling, and of course we will speed that up a little bit more so it looks really nice. But for now we'll leave it at 10 so we can see what's going on. Now remember, we want to reset it when it gets to the bottom. Now remember, it's using this Y location from the scene 1 right here to know where it is in space. If I double click on it, this shape is using this crosshair to locate itself. So if I write 0 here, then it's right there on this cross. And that guy's on that cross, and that one's that cross. But it's not at the 0, 0 point up here in this view. Okay? But that's the X and Y that we're controlling in our code. So just keep that in mind. Remember, we're not controlling the shape, we're controlling the symbol. And the symbol is not at 0, 0. So it is at probably halfway through the screen, which is at Y equals 574. Now, when it gets to the bottom, which is, remember, 1080, but I'm going to do 1090, we want it to reset. So remember, this move rain happens every tick, every frame. And every frame, I want to check. I want to say, hey, if your Y, if your this dot Y is bigger than 1090, do the stuff between these little brackets. And what do we want it to do when it gets to 1090? We want to set it back to Y to the top. And some people will say, well, let's set it back to Y equals 0. And that would work, but it would make the raindrop appear at the top all of a sudden, like the whole thing. And I don't want that. I want it to appear above the screen, above stage, right? And then come into the stage. So remember, 0 is the top, so negative 10 is slightly above the top. And let's speed it up so we can see it happen faster. And you'll see these raindrops get to the bottom and then go back up, and get to the bottom and go back up. Okay. Oh, and they're not doing it. So that is part of coding, which is like, what happened? Let's look at the code and try to fix it. I forgot the this in this case. Remember, in ActionScript 3, you don't have to put this, but in this program, in HTML5, you do. And so there it goes. You can see it. It goes down and back up, down and back up, and it goes on and on. Okay. Alrighty. Now, it's starting to repeat, and I'm not liking that. So, along with its resetting, I'm also going to set it to a random X. And the random X function is math.random. Okay? And that's going to give me a random number from 0 to 1. But I don't want 0 to 1 because that means all my raindrops will eventually go here. And 0 is here and 1 pixel is right over here. So all my raindrops will hug to the side. But I apologize for the math, for those who don't like math, but I'm going to multiply by 1920. And what does that mean? Well, hopefully everyone understands that 0, which this is the smallest the math random can give me is a 0, is 0 times 1920 would give me 1920. Now remember, the highest math random can give me is number 1. So 1 times 1920 is 1 times 1920, which is 1920. Okay, so this is the highest it could be. Okay, so it's going to give me a number from 0 to 1920. Or math random can also be 0.5 or 0.8 or 0.6. And point something of 1920, it's going to be some number between there. So I'm not sure what number it's going to give me, but it's going to give me something between 0 and 1920 because I multiplied this 0 through 1 random generator by 1920 pixels. Okay, and so let's see if that works. Good, yeah, you see the raindrop it's not falling here anymore. Well, now it's over there, oh, now it's over there, okay. And so it just keeps randomly raining, okay. Now a few things we can do to make it a little more interesting is we can also affect the alpha. Hopefully you can do it here. Now the cool thing about alpha is the alpha is a number from 0 to 1. So I don't need to multiply by anything because again, the smallest this would be a 0 and the highest this would be as 1. Or it'll be somewhere in between 0 and 1, like 0.6 alpha, 0.3. And so it'll be sometimes see-through, sometimes it won't, sometimes it'll be invisible. And so you can see here now I have some variation in my alpha in my rain. Okay. Now 3 drops is pretty okay. Looks okay. Looks pretty good. They're kind of thick. So here's where I would start shrinking my stroke down in my shape. And then go to scene 1. And I can copy all of these raindrops and paste them. And maybe I'll do one more. And so now I have 9 drops. Let's see what that looks like. It starts looking a little bit better. Okay. And of course, you can add more rain. You can slow it down. You can speed it up. And how do you do that? Again, remember, our script isn't all of them. So it doesn't matter which one we click on because they're all sharing the script. And so I go right-click on that little A. I go to Actions. And there's my script. Make sure you don't accidentally click on this frame and say, oh, I don't know where it is. It must have been deleted. And do it all over again here. Because then you'll have 2 places. And you might get some errors because you'll have 2 functions that are the same. And it'll say you can't do that. You can't define the same function twice. And so make sure you look for that little A. And then here again, you can change the speed. You can change things like it does. You can also, here in the speed, you can also make it rain slightly to the right or to the left. I'm going to do it the old way just so you can see it. Let's move it to the right. Maybe let's do exaggerate so you can see what I'm doing. 20 pixels. So every time it moves 100 down, it'll move 20 to the right, 100 down, 20 to the right, 100 down, 20 to the right. And again, of course, it doesn't draw that step. It shows you where it is after every frame rate. So it'll do that kind of calculation first, and then I'll show it to you. Then it'll calculate again. And so it'll look like it's going at a diagonal. There you go. There's a little bit of wind pushing the rain to the side. Okay. So we left off with making it rain, and the particles all move at the same rate. And of course, you can slow it down, speed it up. But if you do it, you're doing it for all of them. So they all have the same speed going down. But we can vary the speed by using something called variables. A variable is something that can hold a number. So to define a variable, I type in var, and then a variable name. And for something like speed sounds like a good name. It doesn't have to be speed. It could be, what are the words? Velocity, I guess, would work, or VEL for velocity. It's up to you. You're the programmer. If it turns color, if it turns purple, then maybe don't use that one because that means that word is already understood by Animate and it has a function already built into the program. But if it doesn't, then you might be safe. Var speed, and let's set the speed here to 80. So since speed is equal to 80, I don't have to type in 80 here. I can just type in speed here because it's the same, it's 80. And the cool thing about making variables, besides what I'm going to show you, is if I ever want to change speed, I can do here at the top. I don't have to hunt for it in the code. And what if I'm using speed in multiple places? Say I'm using it in 50 places. I don't have to change it 80, 80, 80, 80 in all of them. Oh no, I need to go faster, 100, 100, 100, 100 all the time. I just change it in one place, And all the places I say speed will now be 80 or 100. So it really makes things efficient. But in this case, I have to make a variable because I want to be able to change the speed. And so here, this happens once because it's not inside the function, move rain. Remember, move rain happens every frame, every tick. But this is not inside the function. So this only happens once in the beginning. And it says, okay, my initial speed is 100. Here might be, for those who are interested in game design, here's a place where you also set the score to 0. You don't want to do it here because then you'll never be able to go past score 0 because you keep resetting it back to 0. But by doing it outside of the function, it only happens once. Now, it's moving at 100 pixels, 100 pixels. Remember here's the thing that happens when every time it gets reached the bottom. I'm going to let the raindrop initially go 100 pixels, but once it reaches the bottom and I reset the raindrop's Y location back to -10, which is the top, I set a random X location for placing the raindrop either here or here or here between 0 and 1920 pixels, because that's my HD resolution. And I give it some random alpha between 0 and 1. Remember, 1 being totally opaque, 0 being transparent. And I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to set speed equal to math.random. Okay. Now, that's just going to set the raindrop either 0 speed, that means the raindrop won't move at all, or 1, which means it'll move really slowly, not 100 pixels. So I don't want that. And some people might say, well, why don't you just add 100 to it? Yeah, that's perfect. So now it's 100 plus 0, which makes it 100. So it's about 100 pixels. Or 100 plus 1. So now it's moving 101 speed, which is about the same. So we won't notice anything. But what if we did what we did here, where we multiply 100 times something like, let's say 50. So now it's 100 plus 0 times 50, which would be 100. Or, remember, math random could be as big as 1. So now it's 100 plus 1 times 50. And 1 times 50 is 50. And so it's 100 plus 50, which would be 150. Okay. So now you can see some noticeable speed. And of course, math random can be 0.8 or 0.5. 0.5 times 50 is 25. And 100 plus 25 is 125. So it's in the middle. So it's just give me some random number. If you want more fluctuation, then multiply by 100. So now it's 100 plus 0 or 100 plus 100. So this will range from 100 to 200 pixels. Let's see what that looks like if we see the variation in the rain speed. Okay. It's kind of going pretty quick, so you may not notice it. So let's exaggerate it by taking away the 100. And so now it will give me a number between 0 and 100. Because the highest math random can be is 1 times 100, which is 100. And the lowest math random can be is 0 times 100, which is 0. So now you'll see sometimes the raindrop not moving at all. I guess you won't see the ones not moving at all because they'll be stuck at the top. But you can see how some are really slow, which looks kind of fake, and some are moving a little faster, which is okay. But now it looks just like a bunch of lines just moving through the stage, which is not as cool. So obviously I wouldn't want that. So I'm going to go back to something like that. I kind of like the subtle variation like this. And voila. Now we have some more realistic looking rain. Okay. And again, if you were going for the more cartoony look, no problem. Just go into animate, go into the raindrop, delete or modify that line, and redraw the new one. Okay. Let's go ahead and paint it in a little bit. Okay. And so now we have. Okay. Now again, that's more cartoony, but maybe that's what you're going for.